Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jacinta. It is the first time here. Thank you for stopping by. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how I made this Ankara gown. If it's what you're interested in learning, kindly watch till the end. And if you're yet to subscribe, please hit on the subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. Without wasting much time, let's get started with the tutorial. This is the Ankara fabric I'll be using, and I'm making use of 3.5 yards. Starting with the back piece. The first thing I'll do is to fold my fabric into two and rule a starting line. Placing my tape on that starting line, I will mark my bust line of 11 inches and half length of 17 inches. From that half length, I will mark 9 inches downwards for my hip line. And the full length I'm using is 39 inches. So I'll mark 39 inches downwards and I'll square across these lines. From the full length, I'm going to mark extra 3 inches downwards. This 3 inches is the turning allowance. It's going to be part of the lining. As we go further with the tutorial, you will understand better. So after marking the 3 inches downwards, I will square across. On the starting line, which is also my shoulder line, I'll mark half of my shoulder measurements, which is 8 inches. On that point, I'll come down by 1.5 inches for the shoulder slope. Still on the shoulder lines, I will come in by 3 inches from the center back, which is my neck width. I will connect the 3 inches neck width to the 1.5 inches shoulder slope. For the neck depth, I came down by 1.5 inches, connected it with a curve to the 3 inches neck width. From the shoulder slope, I'll mark 8 inches downwards for the armhole level and connect it to a straight line. On the point where the armhole level stopped, I'm going to extend the line and that becomes my chest line. I'll find the midpoint of this straight line and come in by ½ inch. Then on my chest line, I will mark quarter of my bust circumference. Then use my armhole curve to connect from the shoulder slope to the ½ inch I came in by, to the quarter of my bust circumference that I marked on my chest line. This forms my armhole curve. On my bust line, I'll divide my bust circumference by 4. Mark whatever it gave me there, and I'm going to add extra 2 inches for sewing allowance and 1 inch for ease. I'll add the same thing on my chest line. On my half length, I'll divide my waist circumference by 4 and mark it. I will equally add 2 inches for sewing allowance and 1 inch for ease. On the hip line, I'll do the same thing. Mark quarter of my hip circumference and I'll add extra 3 inches. On the full length, I'll mark whatever measurement I have on the hip line. That is quarter of the hip circumference plus the 3 inches. After marking it, I'll add extra 3 inches. That is quarter of the hip circumference plus extra 6 inches on the full length and also on the allowance line. After marking this point, I'll connect with my ruler, and after connecting, I'll cut it out. I was done cutting it out. So the 3 inches I added on the down part is going to be like this after sewing it. It's going to be part of the lining. The next thing I'm going to do now is to cut the front piece. So the front piece has a zip. So it's going to have a zip allowance at the front. I've folded my fabric into 2. I'll place the front piece on it and leave 1 inch at the center front. I'm just going to cut this excess out so I'll have space on my table. I will arrange it very well and mark 1 inch at the center front from the top to the full length. After marking, I'll connect with a straight line. I'll mark 3 inches downwards for the neck depth and connect with a curve to the 3 inches neck width. After that, I'll go ahead and cut this out. The next thing I will do now is to cut the sleeve. I'll fold my fabric into 2 and roll a starting line. From that starting line, I'll mark 8 inches downwards, which is the length of the short sleeve, and I'll add extra ½ inch for joining of the flare, making it 8.5. So I'm marking 8.5 inches. From the starting line, I'll also mark 4 inches downwards for the biceps. To determine the measurements I'm going to input on that biceps line, I'll get one of my piece, either the front piece or the back piece. I will minus ½ inch from the shoulder because I'm going to join the sleeve after joining the front and back shoulder. From that ½ inch, I'll take the measurement of the armhole curve. You take the measurement just like the way you see me doing. So you have after doing this, whatever I have is what I'm going to input on the biceps line. So I'm trying to arrange my fabric so that I will input the exact measurement I got on the curve. What I got from the curve was 11 inches, so I'm going to mark 11 inches on the biceps line. With a slanted line, I'll connect from the center of the starting line to the biceps line like this. I will mark the midpoint of that slanted line. From the midpoint of the slanted line, I'll connect it downwards to the starting line with a curve, and I'll also connect upwards from the midpoint to this biceps line. So just go ahead and connect it with a curved ruler, just like the way you see me doing. After that, I'll cut it out following the curved line and take the measurements of this curved area to make sure that it aligns with the armhole curve of my dress. On the sleeve length, I'll mark half of my round sleeve measurement and add extra 1.5 inches for sewing allowance. Then connect it to the biceps line like this. After connecting it, I'll cut it out. For the second sleeve, I'll fold my fabric into two, place this one on it and cut it out. I was done cutting the short sleeve. What I'm going to do now is to cut the two-step flay attached to the short sleeve. I'll fold my fabric into two like this and fold it again into four like this. Then fold that four into two again like this. Now I have 8 folds. I'll be cutting each step of the flay for the two sleeves together. That was why I folded it into 8. So if you are cutting the two sleeves together, you're going to fold into 8. While folding, make sure that the length is up to your desired flay length. After folding, you're going to add 1 inch to your arm circumference and divide it by 6.28. The 1 inch you're adding is for the sewing allowance. Whatever you get, you're going to impute it from the tip of this fold on the closed part. You mark it round just like the way you see me doing. So you mark your answer to form a curve, and from that curve, you're going to mark your sleeve length. So the sleeve length I measured my client is 15 inches, both the short sleeve and the flay. So I minused the 8 inches I used to cut the short sleeve. So 15 minus 8 is 7 inches. So I'm marking 7 inches for the length of the longest flay. I'll add extra 2 inches for joining and for the folding of the down part, making it 9 inches. So the full length I'm marking is 9 inches. That is for the first and the longest flay. After making the length the way I did, I'm going to cut it out. This is what it looks like after cutting it. You can see I have 2 pieces for the two sleeves. For the second and the shorter flay, I'm going to fold my fabric into 8, just like what we did for the first flay. On the closed end, I'm going to input the measurements I marked on the first flay. From that fold, I'll mark 5 inches downwards for the length and add extra 2 inches, making it 7 inches for the length of the second and the shorter flay. After marking it, I'll cut it out. I was done with that. I'm going to open one side of each of them. For the pocket, I'll cut square of 10 by 8 inches. I'll fold my remaining fabric into 2, cut out this excess, fold it into 4 because I'm cutting the 2 pockets together. Cut it open so I can have 2 pocket pieces. Mark 10 inches on the down part, which is the width, and 8 inches on both sides, which is the length. Then I'll cut it out. I will also cut the lining for the front and back piece. While cutting the lining, minus 5.5 inches from the full length of the lining. I was done cutting the lining for the front and back piece, as you can see, and I've minused 5.5 inches from the full length of the lining. I minused 5.5 inches from full length of the lining because normally I was supposed to minus 6 inches. Because of the extra 3 inches I added to the fabric, and another 3 inches because the fabric will now replace the lining. So I was supposed to minus 6 inches, but I'm making it 3 inches. I minus the first 3 inches, then the other one will be 2.5 because I'll be using ½ inch to join the fabric and and the lining together. I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying, but the concept is whatever extra measurement you add to your fabric, you're going to minus times 2 of it from the lining and leave ½ inch, because you're going to be joining the fabric and the lining with ½ inch. So for example, if I add 2 inches to my fabric, as per I want it to be part of the lining, while I'm cutting the lining, I'm going to minus 3.5 inches. So that is how it works. Unless you don't want to do it this way, this is totally optional. You can just add the normal ½ inch for joining the lining and the fabric. Placing the fabric and the lining front facing front, I'm going to use ½ inch to join the down part of the back piece. For the front piece, I'm going to attach the zip before turning with lining. To do this, I'm going to mark that 1 inch I added for the zip allowance. I'll mark this 1 inch both on the lining and on the fabric, and after marking it, I'll go to my machine and sew it. I was done sewing it, as you can see. Next thing I'm going to do now is to attach the zip. To do this, from the neck depth, I'll mark 7 inches downwards. Remember to also mark this 7 inch on the lining. So the way you attach your normal back zip is when you're going to also attach this front zip. On that 7 inches I marked, I'm going to sew it on both sides. So I'll do that and come and show you guys. I was done joining the lining to the fabric of the back piece at the down part, as you can see. What I'm going to do now is to turn to the right side and top stitch on the lining, and I've also joined the zip of the front piece. I'm also going to mark 7 inches on the lining of the front piece and loose from that neck depth to that 7 inch. Remember to stitch at that end so this will not loose from there. What I'm going to do now is to turn the front piece with the lining at the down part using ½ inch, and just like what we did for the back, I'm also going to top stitch on the lining. Placing the back lining and fabric front facing front, I'm going to use ½ inch to turn the neckline, and I'm equally going to use ½ inch to sew the two sides, leaving only the armhole open. I was done joining the lining to the fabric of the front piece. What I'm going to do now is to turn the neckline. I'll open the front zip, place the lining and fabric front facing front. I'll use ½ inch to join the neckline of the fabric and the lining. Then on the zip area, I'll also join the zip allowance on the fabric and that of the lining together, just like the way you see me doing. Now, from the neck, for the zip area, I'm going to sew from that neck depth to that 7 inches, and I'm going to sew very close to the zip. I'm pinning this so that it will be easier for me to sew. So go ahead and do yours, just like the way you see me doing. I'll quickly do this and come and show you guys what it looks like. I was done sewing it. I added hemming gum while I was sewing so that when I iron it, it will lap. I've turned it to the front side. You can see how neat it looks. I will turn it back to the wrong side and I will sew both sides using ½ inch. So I was done joining the two sides of the front piece, and I've also joined the two sides of the back piece, as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is to turn to the right side of both pieces, and I'm going to give it a good ironing. I was done ironing and this is what it looks like. You can see how neat it came out, both the front piece and the back piece. And you can also see that the 3 inches I added on the fabric is now part of the lining. You can see how neat it is. What I'm going to do now is to join the front and back shoulder together using ½ inch. I was done with that. Next thing I'm going to do now is to join the flare to the short sleeve. I'm going to notch the center of the short sleeve and that of the flare, and then I'm going to join it front facing front using ½ inch. I will join the shorter one first before joining the longer one, and I'm going to fold the down part of the flare. I'll quickly go over to my machine and do that. I have joined the flare and folded the down part, and this is what it looks like. The next thing I'm going to do now is to attach it to the dress. To do this, I will place the center of the sleeve to the shoulder of my dress, front facing front, and I will use ½ inch to sew it on both sides of the armhole curve. I'll do this for both sleeves. After joining the sleeve, I will use 1.5 inch to close it because that was what we added as the allowance. I'll also use 1.5 inch to sew the sides because we added 2 inches while we were cutting, and we used half inch to turn with our lining. Now we are left with 1.5 inch. While sewing for the pocket, I'm going to stop at my half length. That is where I'm going to attach the pocket from. I'll stop at my half length, then I'll mark 7 inches downwards. This is where the pocket will be. From my half length to 7 inches downwards, while closing the sides, I'm going to stop at my half length, then I'll mark 7 inches downwards and sew the remaining part, leaving that side open. I'll go over to my machine, I'll do that and be back. I was done closing both sides on the sleeve, and you can see the opening I left for the pocket. The next thing I'm going to do now is to attach the pocket to this dress. To do this, I'm going to place the pocket bag front facing front on both allowance. I'm going to sew it using half inch on both allowance. I'm going to close it also like this. So just like the way you see me doing, this is how I'm going to close the pocket bags to the allowance, and I'm going to sew it using half inch. So go ahead and do yours the same way. And that will be all for the cutting and sewing of this dress. If you find this video helpful and you've learned something new, hit on that subscribe button, like, share and drop a comment, and do not forget to turn on your notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. So this is the final look of this dress. You can see how beautiful it came out. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in my next tutorial.